Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. Dill, to start the 2024 season, Utah was my pick to win the Big 12. Now, I don't get a lot right. I'm feeling very good about my pick to win the Big 12 after this Saturday, going on the road, true freshman quarterback, and absolutely taking it to Oklahoma State. Now, I see we on the screen, we're at 22-19. Though this was not a 22-19 game. I was listening to kind of some national media stuff earlier this morning talking about Oklahoma State roaring back in this football game. Though we both watched it on Saturday. We both watched it back again tonight. There was not a second in that football game after the first quarter that I was nervous about Utah not winning this game. And they won it the Utah way. Like, yeah, they had a true freshman quarterback that did make some mistakes that, Cam Rising wouldn't make. They ran the ball 52 times. They controlled the time of possession for almost 3/4 of this football game. Like, Oklahoma State barely even could possess the football. And when they did, again, they made a 26-year-old quarterback in Alan Bowman look like he ain't ever played a snap of college football in his life. It was an incredibly impressive performance coming out of this week. I think they're clearly the team to beat in the Big 12, especially considering what we just saw from Kansas State on the road to BYU. Dill, let's get into this Utah team. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys. Dill, the Utah fans, hand up. I picked Oklahoma State to win that football game last week. You took Utah. The amount of support y'all continue to show, even though I picked against the Utes, we appreciate that more than y'all know. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Much more importantly, would love to hear how the Utah fans are feeling about this team heading into the rest of 2024. Dill, let's start with this Utah offense. And again, when you talk Utah football, you normally start with the defense, and we're certainly going to get there. It was a dominant performance by the defense. You go into Stillwater, Oklahoma. You have a true freshman quarterback. Micah Bernard's that guy. And I think we both have to put our hand up and say we kind of said to Utah, how good are they at running back heading into 2024? The boys missed on that one.
Yeah, I had some huge questions about how great they were at the running back spot. I think you kind of said it. I mean, his ability to make guys miss in the hole, he was popping off big runs. He was grinding out hard yards. Very, very complete back. I think you give him the 25 touches. Didn't really slow down. I really, really like what you saw.
I was concerned if Utah was going to be able to run the football like they had been able to with guys like Jaquindon Jackson. Like, Micah Bernard gives him that too. But you talk about the elusivity, like how he makes people miss. Still, he's only had 67 carries in the 2024 season, 25 missed tackles forced. Now, I look at that stat for a lot of the top running backs. I'll say this right now. That is by far the highest number that I have seen. Micah Bernard's ability to get to the second level. I mean, this Utah offensive line is very, very good. They block him up to the second level. He's routinely making linebackers and safeties miss in space.
I don't think it'd be fair to say, like, oh, he's good by a product of that offensive line. And they're moving guys. They're being really, like, their Utah offensive line's back. I think that's a big part I feel like is going to make Utah really, really dangerous. But yeah, Micah Bernard's turning 5-yard gains into 10-yard gains, into 30-yard gains at times. And that's kind of what you want to see from a team that, again, I think can kind of be more explosive than what we probably saw in the past game if Cam Rising comes back and is playing on point. But if they can grind the ball out like that, hit big runs, that's a really, really dangerous Utah.
Let's get to that. Like, what makes this Utah team different, at least in my mind, and this is what we were talking about when Cam Rising was healthy. And I think it's still going to pertain if and when Cam Rising does come back for this Utah team. Dill, we ain't saying anything groundbreaking about Utah running the football. Like, as long as I've been alive, Utah's been running the football pretty well. What makes this Utah team different in my mind is this is the most talented pass catcher group that I think Utah's had in a very long time. Now, we've seen some really good tight ends come through Utah. They haven't had wide receivers like Dorian Singer and Money Parks. Go back to when Cam Rising was healthy, Dill, 11.9 yards per pass attempt. That's top 10 in the country for Cam Rising. And more importantly, his average depth of target is 12.5 yards. This is a Utah team that, yes, is the Utah team that we all know and love. The reason I picked them to win the Big 12, can grind teams down, but they'll at the same time, they are now sprinkling in that ability to be explosive in the passing attack. You talk about Utah now.
And it's not just being explosive in the passing attack, it's the ability to win one-on-ones, because I don't think the quarterback play, obviously, when Cam Rising went down was any good last year, but I also don't think you saw the wideouts playing the way they're playing now. You see Money Parks taking a big step. I think Pittman's playing good when he gets the ball in space. Now, he's probably not the same route runner probably that the other two are, and those two are really, really good doing that. When they can get Pittman the ball in space, he's really, really dynamic, makes good plays, can make guys miss. I think they have a much more well-rounded skill set. I think their ability to win on one-on-one man coverage is a huge difference from anything I've seen from Utah in a little while. And don't forget about Brent Kuthi because
I was going to say, not to mention the All-American caliber tight end that's averaging 18 yards per reception. Like these guys are just hitting explosive plays, and I think what's fascinating, like we get up here, we lead this conversation with Dill, Utah's the favorite to win the Big 12. I don't think we're saying nothing groundbreaking about that, but I think what's so exciting about this Utah team is you look at them potentially in the college football playoffs, right? Getting that potential first round bye, winning the Big 12. This team can be dangerous. And why I think they can be dangerous is two reasons. One, what's the biggest differentiator between, solid teams and then the elite teams that we see across college football, the Georgias, the Alabamas? It's largely line of scrimmage play. And there's just a lot of teams that might have some good quarterbacks and might have some good skill position, but they can't kind of match up with some of those teams in the trenches. Dill, I think this Utah team has the ability to kind of have guys that look like the guys that are on Georgia and Alabama. So I think that's
one. I don't think Oklahoma State's the best defensive line in the history of college football. I don't necessarily think that's groundbreaking, but they were really dominating them. I think that to me translates a little better than, okay, they run the ball okay against a good Oklahoma State team. I mean, they made that team look like an FCS school. Like, they were getting guys off the line of scrimmage, how much movement they were creating, how many times you saw running backs getting up to the second level of 3-4 yards before even being contacted. I mean, that's really where, especially because Oklahoma State was playing with pretty heavy boxes.
And if I recall, they got 2 sophomores starting at the tackle spots. Like, it's a factory out there in Salt Lake City. And then you combine that with the ability to mix in some explosive plays, which we're not used to saying about this Utah offense. I think that's what makes them special. Now, we just spent 7 minutes talking about the Utah offense. Let's talk about the star of the show, at least in my mind. This Utah defense, still, I have a ton of respect for Oklahoma State's offense. Like, I think Alan Bowman, he didn't play good, but I think a large part of that was that Utah defense. Dill, this Oklahoma State offense was legit the first couple of weeks before they ran into the buzzsaw that was the Utah defense. You got 3, in my mind, NFL wide receivers in Stribling, Owens, and Presley. You have, obviously, an NFL caliber running back in Ollie Gordon, who ran for, 42 yards, an offensive line that is a combined starter, like 112 starts. This is a good Oklahoma State offense. And for 3.5 quarters, 3 3/4 quarters, they made this Oklahoma State offense just look lost.
Yeah, and the big thing for me was the secondary coming to play, because that was kind of our question. I mean, I kind of figured with the way Oklahoma State's offensive line was playing, with how good Utah is in that front 7. I mean, that front 4 defensive line is a real problem. Those 2 defensive tackles are about, I think, as good of a tandem as you'll see maybe outside of like a Michigan or Ohio State. They're dominant, but those corners playing the way they did, not giving up a ton of, or not taking penalties, not giving up big plays, very, very impressed. Shout out Cam Calhoun, Michigan guy. He can really, I think he's going to be a really good player.
Kind of pissed at Utah for taking Cam Calhoun from the boys, because so we were watching that game and we're like, who is that cat? And it's like, that's Cam Calhoun. Like, we didn't even get to see him at Michigan. Now he's like looking like an all-conference cornerback at Utah. Dill, if there's one thing that I'm going to be nitpicky about Utah for just a second, we were wrong about the secondary. Like, not necessarily wrong, just a little bit of an overreaction in terms of watching that Utah State game and saying, giving up kind of some explosive plays to an offense that we don't think's all that good.
Plays, not tackling great, but again, those were kind of isolated incidents, honestly. You think there's probably like 5 plays that are kind of clouding.
And it's fair to say that was cleaned up and again, this is a Utah team. They always play their best football when it matters. When the lights are the brightest, this Utah team always seems to play their best. I'm going to get nitpicky for just a second. I want more of the pass rush. And I get Oklahoma State's offensive line is very good in pass protection. They've been good all year. Go back to last year. In elite pass rush when that unit was fully healthy. Obviously, they dealt with some injuries in the back half of the season, probably took a dip. I think you got the guys. You look at a guy like Fanu, Junior Tafuna is probably the best pass rusher on this defensive line on the inside. If there is a place where I can see Utah potentially taking that step, and I say that because I think they have the personnel to have a pass rush, I just don't think it's been all that impressive throughout the first couple of weeks. if they can get that element of the defense working, because you look at the combination of, hey, we are going to be elite against the run. Junior, it doesn't get any better than Junior in terms of stopping the run. He's got 10 run stops on the year. Lander Barton's an all-conference linebacker, potentially all-American linebacker. You win on first and second down. You stop the run. We know Utah's going to do that. If they can kind of ramp up that pass rush heading into the back half of the season, to me, that's like the missing piece for this Utah defense to take that step from, hey, damn defense to a college football playoff defense that can make some noise.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm kind of with you because Connor O'Toole, to me, is one of those guys who thought he had a great year in 2022, I believe. Obviously got hurt later into that year. Came back in 23. I thought started to look better towards the end of the year, started to get rolling. He's a guy I think there's a lot of juice that they can get out of him. He's probably the guy I'm looking for to kind of replace what they were losing in the draft from last year because he to me has the physical traits. I've seen him play. I think the way you need to, the way Utah wants defense ends to play, where it's probably not that like super bendy, explosive edge guy, but a real handful with his hands, does a good job of collapsing pockets. And when Utah's doing that, that's when they're at their best. I think of the games they played Caleb Williams, where it was like ball snapped in the pocket, just converges on him. That's kind of how I want to see this Utah team get back to it because I think they got the heavy-handed guys.
That's kind of what I'm saying. You know, there's a lot of examples where we're like, hey, they got to get better on the offensive line or they got to get better on the defensive line. Well, they ain't got any dudes. Like, they ain't going to get better this season. Wait till that transfer portal comes around. Like, I think Utah's got the guys. I just want to kind of see it come together in the back half of the season. I'm feeling great about the Utah to win the Big 12.
I feel like even like we're talking about them at number 12. I mean, this is a team that I feel like people aren't accounting for how much more developed their offense is than what we've seen it. Because again, when Utah's always been good, it's always been like, well, they're really, really good. They're really, really physical, but there's a cap on what they can do because they just can't really. They're not a great offense. I think there's potential for them to be a real dangerous offense when Cam Rising gets back and they're clicking because they haven't had this weaponry, like 4 guys who I think are legitimate college football player difference makers, probably since I've been watching.
Yeah, 100. I think they got moved up to 10 in the new rankings. But I mean, I'm looking at the schedule though, and it's like, again, Kyle Whittingham knows, hey, we ain't looking past any games. I know Kyle Whittingham's not going to do that. What team in the Big 12 is going to challenge them? Like the way Kansas State looked, I have a hard time seeing a guy like Avery Johnson. If we made Alan Bowman look like that, like Avery Johnson, again, I think Avery Johnson's super talented. I still do think Kansas State's probably the biggest threat to Utah.
But I even look at the way their like safeties play and how athletic they are and how good they are tackling in space. I think Smith is like one of the better players.
They tackle at the second level in space incredibly well. That's not a surprise when you talk Utah, but that's another thing that I noted kind of on the rewatch. Like
that's like the way I think teams can have a chance of beating them. The teams that they'll probably have to deal with, like the Kansas States of the world. I just don't know where anyone goes because nobody, I think, is really particularly close in terms of physicality.
No.
Oklahoma State might have been as close as you're going to get in the Big 12. And then athletically, I don't think they're on a different plane than I think people realize. Like, I think there's more high-end talent. I think there's more both on offense and defense.
We just got to add Utah to the Big Ten at this point. Like that, as a Big Ten guy, like it's just a Big Ten team hanging out there on the West Coast. We'll close it out there. Again, Utah, feeling good about them. Wanted to hop on, kind of give some of our thoughts to the Utah fans. Appreciate you guys rocking with it. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.